By every rule of planetary ecology, the Fremen should not exist. Arrakis receives almost no rainfall. Surface water is so scarce that tears at a funeral are considered a profound gift. The average temperature in the deep desert is lethal. There is no native vegetation, no rivers, no seas, just sand, rock, wind, and worms. A human being exposed to the open desert without a stillsuit, the Fremen's moisture-capturing suit, would be dead in hours.
And yet millions of people live here, have lived here for thousands of years, have built a culture so precisely adapted to this environment that they regard it not as a wasteland, but as home. The Fremen are not surviving Arrakis. They are in a relationship with it, a deep, reciprocal, dangerous, sacred relationship. And understanding that relationship is the key to understanding why Dune is not just a great novel. It is one of the most rigorous pieces of speculative ecology ever written. Herbert consulted with ecologists and systems thinkers while writing Dune. The stillsuit design is grounded in real thermodynamics, the principle that if you can capture and recycle the moisture your body produces, you can survive in conditions that would otherwise be lethal. Real-world researchers working on water harvesting in arid environments have cited the stillsuit as a genuine conceptual model. That is how well Herbert thought this through.
Start with the stillsuit, because it is a piece of engineering so elegant it reads like something a real survival engineer would design, not a novelist. The stillsuit covers the entire body. It captures moisture from breath, sweat, and urine, filters it through a series of pads and tubes, and returns it as drinkable water in a tube the wearer can access at the collar. A well-fitted Fremen stillsuit loses only a thimbleful of moisture per day. The suit is not a costume. It is a closed-loop water recycling system that makes human habitation of a desert planet possible. The Fremen call sandworms. They regard them as gods, not metaphorical gods, functional gods. Because the worms maintain the desert, and the desert is all the Fremen have ever known. To the rest of the galaxy, sandworms are an obstacle to spice production. To the Fremen, they are the sacred keepers of their world. The gap between those two perspectives is the gap between colonizer and indigenous inhabitant, rendered in sand and biology. You cannot understand Arrakis without understanding sand. They are not background creatures. They are the central organism of the entire planetary ecology, and their relationship to the spice is one of the most ingenious pieces of world building in science fiction. Here is the life cycle as Herbert designed it. Pre-spice mass builds up in the sand. When water contacts it, it explodes, producing the spice blow. The spice blow also attracts sandworms, who eliminate the water. The sandworm larvae, called sand trout, bind underground water into vast sealed pockets, keeping the surface desert dry. Without the sandworms, water would accumulate. With water, the sandworms die. Without sandworms, there is no spice. It is a closed system that destroys itself if any single element is disrupted.
The Fremen's long-term project, the one Liet Kynes, the planetologist, has guided for generations, is a terraforming of Arrakis. The dream of making the planet green, of releasing the water the sand trout have locked underground, planting vegetation, building weather systems. It is a 10,000-year plan, a civilization's bet on its own future, and it would destroy the sandworms, which would end the spice, which would end the spacing guild, which would collapse the entire Imperium. The Fremen are quietly planning the most consequential ecological intervention in human history, and nobody outside their sietches knows it is happening.
What makes the Fremen the most rigorously designed civilization in all of science fiction is that nothing in their culture is decorative. Every custom, every ritual, every value traces directly back to the logic of desert survival. The prohibition on crying except at funerals, water is too precious to waste on personal grief. The culture of absolute silence when crossing open desert. Sound carries, and worms respond to rhythmic vibration. The communal water stores, the tribal cisterns held more sacred than any religious text because they represent the accumulated survival of generations. Every death yields its water back to the tribe. Even in mourning, the desert's arithmetic continues.
The Stillsuit also has real analogs. Fog collectors in the Atacama Desert, the Namib desert beetle, which harvests water from its own body surface, Worka towers in Ethiopia that condense atmospheric moisture. The engineering principle that Herbert used for the Stillsuit is real, active, and increasingly important as parts of Earth face desertification. Dune's desert technology is not entirely fictional. Some of it is a design brief for the world we are building.
Herbert's ecology is not pure invention. He was influenced by his research into sand dune stabilization in the Oregon Dunes, a real ecological project he covered as a journalist in the 1950s. He was also deeply read in ecology theory, the idea that ecosystems are not static backgrounds, but dynamic, interdependent systems in which every element affects every other. The sandworm ecology is an extrapolation of real keystone species theory, the idea that a single organism can hold an entire ecosystem together and that removing it causes cascading collapse. Think wolves in Yellowstone or sea otters in kelp forests. Remove the keystone and the system you thought was stable reveals it was built entirely around one creature's presence. The Fremen are the most realistic civilization in science fiction because Herbert built them from the inside out, not from aesthetics or archetype, but from ecology, thermodynamics, and the logic of survival under extreme constraint. Every element of who they are traces back to where they are. That is not just good world building, that is how real cultures form. Every human culture on Earth is, at its roots, an adaptive response to its environment. The Fremen just make it impossible to miss. Next week, we step off Arrakis entirely and ask a completely different kind of question. Could warp drives actually work? Physicists have a more interesting answer than you might expect. Subscribe, I'll see you there.